In today's video, we're going to be revisiting my college football playoff predictions, and we're going to put out an updated bracket with new predictions because things change really fast in college football. Because of how chaotic this sport is, especially in the transfer portal era, things can flip-flop very fast. Predictions can age poorly very rapidly, as some of mine did. So let's start by taking a look at what my preseason playoff bracket prediction looked like before we got into the season. Here it is right in front of you. As you can see, there's some things I'm really proud of in here. There's other things maybe not so much. Like, I'm very proud of the fact that I had Georgia Tech and Oklahoma in here and LSU, three teams that weren't necessarily a shoo-in in a lot of other people's playoff brackets, but have performed very well so far in the season. Oklahoma's gotten a couple signature victories over Michigan and Auburn. Georgia Tech went on the road, or they were at home and they beat Clemson. And LSU got the win over Florida and the win over Clemson. Some of their wins haven't aged great, but I'm feeling pretty good about those guys I went out on a limb for. There's a few other teams that have flopped pretty hard. You have Clemson, who ended up losing 3 games already thus far. Notre Dame's already dropped 2. Those are the two that stick out as pretty bad. Texas lost an early game. They haven't looked great. Doesn't look like they're going to be a top 4 seed at this point with how they've looked. So there's things that aged well, things that aged poorly. Outside of that, some of those other teams haven't really been tested yet. We haven't really learned much about Oregon or Penn State. Obviously, they look really good, but we haven't learned what they look like in terms of contender status. So we're going to revisit the bracket, relook at how we did everything, and produce a new bracket. So we're going to start by talking about who comes out of each conference and makes the playoff. It's very similar to how I framed the other video, which maybe I can link that one down in the bio or something like that. I'll figure out some way to link that back for you guys to be able to go back and see sort of what my process was. So let's start with the ACC, and we'll start with the preseason candidates in the ACC. These are the teams I labeled as contenders in the ACC at the start of the season. You had North Carolina, Clemson, SMU, Pitt, Louisville, Clemson, Georgia Tech. Obviously, or Miami, Georgia Tech. I called Clemson twice. But obviously, this list has changed. Clemson looks like a disaster. North Carolina looks like a disaster. SMU isn't necessarily a disaster, but they've lost a couple games. I would say the new candidates in the ACC look like this. It's kind of a short list because it's a short list of teams that have looked good enough. In fact, you could reduce this to 4. I only put Pitt in there out of blind faith in Pat Narduzzi. The fact that their only loss is a close loss in a rivalry game, maybe they still have an opportunity to do something, but honestly, it's really Louisville, Florida State, Miami, Georgia Tech as the 4 teams we're talking about here. At this point, I have been really impressed by Florida State. I've been impressed by Miami as well. I think Georgia Tech is the schedule. The fact that they're still undefeated and the fact that I rocked with them in the preseason makes me want to rock with them again. With Miami, we still haven't seen them in November. We've seen Miami teams look this great early in the season under Mario Cristobal. And I just need to wait and see what happens in November because that's usually the most telling time for a Mario Cristobal team. So for now, I'm going to rock with Georgia Tech and Florida State out of the ACC. Those are going to be my 2 teams that I think are going to make the playoffs out of the ACC. Takes us to the Big Ten. We've got the teams that I thought were preseason candidates in the Big Ten. You've obviously got the Big 3, Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State. I had Indiana, USC, Illinois, Michigan, and Washington in there as well. The one glaring team that just got a reality check was Illinois, a 53-point loss to Indiana, which justifies Indiana's inclusion in this group. Some people would have argued against that, but man, Illinois is going to get removed from that crew. I'd say these are the updated candidates. We'll see what Washington does this weekend. They host Ohio State. Michigan did take that loss to Oklahoma. I think they've got some limitations that are going to prevent them from being a playoff team this season, but I'm willing to rock with some of these other teams. With USC, a little bit of defensive inconsistency that you don't love to see is still much improved, but I'm actually going to rock with the same 3 I rocked with before, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, but also Indiana. I mean, Indiana has just looked so excellent that I feel it's appropriate to rock with them as a playoff team this season. Very dominant performance by them. You look at their schedule, I think 10-2 with losses to Oregon and Penn State. I think that's still good enough for them. So I would label them as a playoff contender and a playoff team as well in this new playoff pick. That takes us next to the Big 12. You look at the preseason candidates in the Big 12, the teams that I thought might contend for a title. Mostly aged well here. Yes, Baylor has a couple of losses already, but only 1 in conference play. The one that sticks out early is Kansas State. So Kansas State I'd remove from the conversation. Maybe it was a little bit disrespectful to not have BYU in that, but there are a lot of questions about how the offense might look with Bear Bachmeier and with no Jake Retzloff. but they're certainly in the conversation. I still think the Big 12 is a one-bid league, especially considering some of those tough non-conference losses they took, and I think the best team among them is Texas Tech. So I'm going to rock with the Red Raiders as my Big 12 pick in the playoff conversation. Still think it's a one-bid conference, especially considering what happened in the non-conference for them. They did not perform super well. Talking SEC preseason, I was rocking with a lot of teams. I just pretty much put anyone that was sort of labeled as a contender, and two of them have very clearly fallen off. Florida, South Carolina, out of that conversation, and it's really honed in on these teams here. There's some very unfortunate John Mateer news that just dropped. He's going to be out for like at least a month for Oklahoma. I do think that changes things for them, but Oklahoma was a team I was rocking with in the offseason. It feels wrong to wean off of them. I'm still rocking with Alabama, even though they lost to Florida State. I think that's just a really good Florida State team. So I still am rocking with the Crimson Tide as a playoff team. Same with Georgia. With Texas, I don't know how confident I am in them anymore. And I don't know. It comes honestly down to me, for me, between LSU and Texas A&M. Maybe we're considering Ole Miss, especially with how good the offense has looked with Trinidad Chambliss. But at the end of the day, we are going to rock with LSU and Oklahoma. We're kind of sticking to our preseason guns where we can. Again, I'm proud of the inclusion of LSU, Oklahoma, and Georgia State in my original playoff, and so we're going to continue to rock with those guys. This takes us to the group of 6 and the independents. These were the teams we labeled as contenders in the preseason as those top candidates that we had there. You see Toledo maybe hasn't aged the best here, but other than that, everyone else that's listed here is pretty much still intact as a contender. Notre Dame has taken a couple losses. I still think Notre Dame's alive in the general playoff conversation. And a name, obviously that we should keep in mind. But I don't know. At this point, I'm not sure. This is what the updated list looks like. I threw North Texas and Fresno State in there. I suppose I should have jumped to that a little earlier. But updated candidates. At the end of the day, I think Tulane, with the way their offense has looked with Jake Retzloff, they're coming off a pretty humiliating loss to Ole Miss. But they can bounce back in the American Conference. Of all those teams, they're the team I trust the most in terms of coaching, in terms of personnel, in terms of the whole package to make it out of the group of 5. And I don't think Notre Dame's getting a spot, which may have already been spoiled by the fact that I had 11 other teams in combined across the other conferences. So my updated playoff bracket projection is going to include Ohio State, Georgia, Penn State, Florida State, all getting byes. I think Florida State has a really advantageous schedule. For Penn State, they host Oregon. They have to play Ohio State late in the year. It's kind of a 2-game regular season for them. For Georgia, schedule dynamics work out well for them. I think that they're just looking really great. They've answered a lot of questions I had for them in the offensive side of the ball. I still don't think it was too outrageous to have them out of my preseason playoff bracket just because there were some serious questions that need answering. The thing is, they've just answered them very well. Ohio State going to stick at number 1. I just think you look at their schedule, you look at what they have to do. They don't have to do too much to finish as the number 1 team in the country. They get to host Penn State, their biggest game of the year. They already passed a test versus Texas. Looking outside of that, Oregon's my 5 seed. Again, it's those big 3 in the Big Ten. Their schedule just is not as deep. There's less losses lurking for them that are unexpected. Texas Tech, I think, could legitimately run the table in the Big 12 or maybe go 11-1, 12-1 with the Big 12 championship. I think if that's the case, we're seeing them around like the 6th spot. I'm pretty high on the Red Raiders after watching them in person sort of dominate against Utah. That defensive front has been exactly as advertised. Alabama, I've got sticking it at 7. I really think they're going to recover nicely, and I think they've already been playing really nicely after that humiliating loss to Florida State. LSU hanging in there at 8, Indiana 9, Georgia Tech 10, and then I've got Oklahoma sitting in there at 11. They would have been higher, admittedly, if I knew Mateer was healthy, but his status being up in the air, probably being out for a month of the season in some critical games, I've got to bump them a little bit as a result there. Because maybe there's an extra loss hidden or a loss or 2 hidden if he's not playing. And then, of course, we've got Tulane in there as the 12 seed, the group of 5 or 6 representative. So might as well get to picking this thing. I don't really want that to be as much of what the focus is on in this video, but might as well. It's kind of fun to do just to get an updated prediction in there. No upsets in the first round. I would have all the home teams winning. LSU taking on Indiana. Defense has come along really well this season. I've liked what I've seen. Definitely want that offense to show me a little more. I did pick Indiana to pull off a first-round upset last year versus Notre Dame. It wasn't the case. I do think this Indiana team this year may be more capable of that. They've looked pretty good so far, so who knows? But also, I think Illinois was just a little bit overrated. Oregon, I think, gets the win versus Tulane. Summerall's team would be a great story, but Ducks have shown they can just take care of business against inferior competition this year. Georgia Tech, maybe they've got upset juice for sure. I'd say arguably even more than anyone in this bracket. But the way they play football, it doesn't feel like it's going to translate well to the playoffs. And Alabama, a team, I think is really going to get it rolling this year. And then Oklahoma, Texas Tech. I went ahead and rocked with the Red Raiders. If you're guaranteeing me a healthy Mateer and a full-strength Oklahoma team, maybe I'm rocking with them to upset Texas Tech. I think that could be where we see one of the first upsets if we get a Big 12 team that has a strong finish and ends up hosting a playoff game in the first round. Advancing to the semifinals, I think Ohio State comes out on top. Georgia wins. I would pick Alabama for an upset against Penn State. The Nittany Lions in a big game. I don't know if I'm comfortable rocking with them still, especially considering what I think this Alabama team can become. I still trust a lot of my offseason and preseason analysis with that team. I think they can become what I thought they could, and it's fresh in the mind. An Ohio State team that did not look great at times and lost to a bad Michigan team in the regular season that just got hot at the right time and sparked a run in the playoffs. And that's what I think about when I see this Alabama team and what they could do. Sets up a rematch versus Florida State. I would actually pick Alabama to win that rematch in the college football playoffs, matching up against Ohio State in the national title in this scenario. And again, Bama would be my champion. This is, again, me just thinking of what happened with Ohio State this last year. If you can get hot at the right time, the things you can do. And for that reason, I am rocking with Alabama as my national champion, just as I did in the preseason. So I still think Alabama's capable of doing it. I think they're going to do it. And so that is my pick. So Alabama, still my champion. That's my updated bracket. That might piss some people off. That might make some people upset. But it's all in good fun. I still just have confidence in that team, even though they flopped in week 1. I think they're human. I think all the teams are human. And it's obviously not a Nick Saban Alabama team, but it's still a pretty dang good team. So there's my prediction. And that's all I got for this video. I'm sorry, I'm a little sick again. It should be illegal to get sick twice in the same month. But alas, it happened. We got a lot of traveling we're doing. But let me know down in the comments what you think of my updated playoff bracket. If you would make any changes, what changes you would make, all that great stuff. I'll go ahead and link the Discord down below, as I always do, so you guys can go check that out if you want to. It's a great place for college football discussion, all that fantastic stuff. But that's all I got for you guys. I will talk to you guys later.